I'm Madeline Carter, 29 years old. And until a few months ago, I thought I had a pretty solid understanding of who I was and the people I allowed into my life. I was a software engineer at a mid-sized tech company, earning around $140,000 a year. It was good money, but not the kind people imagined when they heard numbers like that. I still had student loans. I had a car payment. I contributed to my savings every month because I'd grown up watching my parents stretch every dollar. And I'd promised myself that stability would never be something I took for granted. I lived alone in a modest apartment I loved. It overlooked a small park where people jogged every morning and walked their dogs in the evenings. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine for 2 years. I'd been dating Ethan Brooks. Ethan was 27 and worked in marketing. He had an easy smile and the kind of confidence that made strangers trust him within minutes. He remembered waiters' names. He knew exactly what to say when I had difficult days at work. When we first met, he'd brought me coffee after our third date because I'd mentioned, in passing, that I had an important product presentation. Back then, I thought those little details meant character. We didn't live together. He had his apartment across town, and I had mine. We'd fallen into a rhythm that felt mature and balanced. We alternated paying for dinners. We split vacation expenses. If one person covered concert tickets, the other grabbed dinner afterward. At least, that's what I believed. 3 months before everything exploded, Ethan started talking nonstop about Las Vegas. "It'll just be a boys' trip," he'd said one Friday night while we folded takeout containers closed. 4 days. Me, Tyler, Marcus, Jason, and Nate. We haven't all gone anywhere together in years. "You should go," I told him. "You work hard." His entire face lit up. He pulled up photos of hotels. "The Cosmopolitan," he said excitedly. "Look at this view." I leaned closer. "It looks amazing. You don't think it's too expensive? Can you afford it?" "I think so." "Then go have fun." He kissed my forehead. "You always support me." I smiled. That's what partners do. The week before the trip, we had dinner at a small Italian restaurant near his apartment. It was an ordinary Tuesday. Soft jazz drifted through the speakers. The smell of garlic and fresh bread filled the air. Ethan ordered wine. He talked about what he was packing, which shows they wanted to see, and whether they should splurge on one really nice dinner. Then he said something that should have made me stop and pay attention. "You know," he said casually, swirling his wine, "Vegas can get expensive." I looked up. "How much are you budgeting?" "Maybe 1,000. 1,000 should be plenty." He hesitated. "What if I run short?" "You mean borrowing money? Just in case." I shrugged. "A few $100s for emergencies isn't unreasonable." He smiled. "You're the practical one." Something about the expression lingered a second too long. At the time, I couldn't explain why it unsettled me. Now I know. Sometimes your instincts notice danger long before your heart catches up. The morning he left, Ethan texted me from the airport. "Boarding now. I'll miss you." I replied instantly. "Have fun. Don't lose all your money." He sent back a laughing emoji. Thursday night. He texted photos of the hotel room. Friday afternoon. Selfies from the pool. Saturday night. Blurry pictures from a nightclub with flashing lights and expensive-looking drinks. Normal vacation updates. I was buried in deadlines at work. I barely glanced at most of them. Sunday afternoon. Around 3 o'clock. I stood in my kitchen, meal prepping for the week. Chicken breast, hariccia, vegetables, The kind of boring routine that made Monday mornings easier. I was halfway through slicing chicken when my phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. I wiped my hands and opened it. "Hey, babe. So I charged about $5. 000 on your credit card during the trip. Don't worry. You earn enough. I'll explain when I get back." I stared at the screen. Then I read it again and again. The knife slipped from my fingers and clattered against the cutting board. I typed back immediately. "What are you talking about? You don't have my credit card." His response came seconds later. "I took a photo of it a while ago." For a moment, my mind refused to understand. A while ago, I've been using the numbers. It's not a big deal. My heart started pounding. "Ethan, you used my card." Amanda. "Stole is a strong word." I froze. He'd typed so quickly that he hadn't even noticed he'd almost used one of his friends' names in place of mine. Then another message arrived. "We're together. What's yours is mine." Right. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too quiet. "You stole my credit card information and spent $5,000 without asking me." He replied almost instantly. "You make enough." I got bottle service. Bought some designer stuff. Upgraded our room. The guys and I had an amazing time. "You would have wanted me to enjoy myself." I stared at those words. You would have wanted me to enjoy myself. As if my love for him automatically granted him access to everything I'd worked for. As if trust meant surrender. As if partnership erased consent. I thought about the nights I'd stayed late debugging code. The weekends I'd sacrificed to hit deadlines. The anxiety I'd carried while building savings account by account. And somewhere in Las Vegas, the man I loved had decided none of it belonged solely to me anymore. He'd decided my boundaries were negotiable. He'd decided I wouldn't mind. A cold realization settled into my chest. This hadn't been impulsive. He had photographed my card weeks earlier. He planned for this. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was deliberate, calculated. I looked down at my phone as another message appeared. "Don't be dramatic. Maddie, I love you." I closed my eyes. Love wasn't supposed to sound like entitlement. Love wasn't supposed to feel like theft. Slowly, with trembling fingers, I opened my banking app and began scrolling through the charges. The first charge hit Friday morning. $800 at a Gucci store. I blinked. Maybe there was some mistake. Maybe someone had cloned the card. Then I kept scrolling. $1,200 for bottle service at XS nightclub. $600 at a luxury spa. $450 at a steakhouse. $900 for more bottle service the following night. $400 at Sephora. Charge after charge after charge. The total sat at the bottom of the screen like a punch to the chest. Wu Mei Yuan. 347. I sank onto one of the kitchen stools. The chicken I'd been cutting sat forgotten on the counter. My apartment was silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I took screenshots of everything. Every transaction. Every timestamp. Every merchant name. Then I reopened Ethan's messages. I took screenshots of those. 2. His confession, his justification. His casual assumption that my hard-earned money existed for his convenience. I stared at our old conversation thread for a long moment. Photos from our anniversary. Memes he'd sent me during work meetings. Voice notes telling me he missed me. 2 years of history, sitting beside evidence of a felony. I wanted to cry. Instead, I took a deep breath and dialed my credit card company. After navigating through automated prompts, a representative answered, "Thank you for calling. How can I help you today?" "My name is Madeline Carter," I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "I need to report fraudulent charges on my account." The representative immediately shifted into professional mode. "Can you describe the unauthorized transactions?" I explained everything. Someone had used my card information without my permission. The purchases had occurred in Las Vegas. They totaled over $5,000. She began reviewing the account. I can see the charges, she said. We'll freeze the card immediately and issue a replacement. We'll also begin a fraud investigation. Relief mixed with nausea. Thank you. There was a pause. Do you know who may have used your card? I swallowed. Yes. And who was that? My boyfriend. Silence. Oh. I closed my eyes. I have text messages from him admitting to it. In that case, she said carefully, you'll need to file a police report. We'll require a copy to support the investigation. I understand. She explained the next steps. The disputed amount would remain under review. A new card would arrive within days. Additional documentation might be requested. By the time I ended the call, my hands had started shaking, because saying it out loud made it real. Not my boyfriend made a mistake. Not my boyfriend borrowed money. My boyfriend committed fraud. I grabbed my purse, phone charger, and keys. 40 minutes later, I sat inside the local police station. The officer assigned to my report listened carefully while I walked him through everything. I handed over screenshots, text message, transaction records, Ethan's full name, his phone number, the details of his Las Vegas trip. He reviewed the evidence, then looked up. So just to clarify, he said, Mr. Brooks took your credit card information without your permission and used it to make personal purchases. Yes. And you have written messages from him admitting it? Yes. He nodded slowly. Ms. Carter. This is credit card fraud. I stared at him. It's also theft. He continued. The amount exceeds the felony threshold in this state. Hearing the word felony attached to Ethan felt surreal. The officer continued. Since the transactions occurred in Las Vegas, we'll coordinate with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police. When does he return? His flight lands tonight around 9. I said. He told me he's staying at the Cosmopolitan. The officer wrote down the information. They may attempt contact while he's still there. I signed statements, initialed paperwork, provided copies of everything. 45 minutes later, I walked back to my car feeling like someone had scooped the air out of my lungs. The sunset painted the sky, orange and pink. People laughed outside restaurants. Cars moved through intersections. The world continued turning. Mine had tilted sideways. By the time I returned home, it was after 6. I hadn't eaten. I hadn't cried. I hadn't fully processed what I'd done. Then my phone buzzed. Ethan, hey. Why isn't your card working? A minute later, I tried buying champagne for the flight and it declined. Then, Maddie. Then, are you seriously ignoring me? This is childish. I stared at the messages. He still didn't understand. Not even now. I set my phone face down, made dinner mechanically, chewed without tasting, turned on the television without absorbing a single scene. Around 8 o'clock, my phone rang. Unknown number. Area code 772. My stomach dropped. I answered. Hello. Is this Ms. Madeline Carter? Yes. This is Detective Morrison with Las Vegas Metropolitan Police. We received a report from your local department regarding alleged credit card fraud. I sat upright. Okay. We made contact with Ethan Brooks at the Cosmopolitan, approximately 20 minutes ago. I couldn't breathe. He's currently being detained for questioning. The room spun. Detained. At this time. Yes. He admitted to using your card when questioned. I closed my eyes. Is he under arrest? That determination depends on the district attorney's office and the circumstances of the interview. Detective Morrison replied. However, his admission substantially supports the case. I gripped the phone tighter. We'll be in touch tomorrow, regarding the next steps. The call ended. I sat motionless. Part of me felt vindicated. Part of me wanted to throw up. I'd just helped get the man I'd loved for 2 years detained by police in Las Vegas. The first tear slid down my cheek before I even noticed I was crying. Not because I regretted reporting him, but because I finally understood that the version of Ethan I'd fallen in love with no longer existed, or maybe he never had. At 9:30, my phone exploded. Kyla, Tyler, Marcus, unknown numbers, voicemails, texts. What the hell did you do? Ethan's freaking out. They're arresting him. Are you serious? It's just money. I opened one message from Kayla. You're ruining his life over $5,000. You make plenty of money. I typed back before I could stop myself. He stole from me. Then I blocked her. More messages followed. I blocked those too. A few minutes later, Ethan's sister called. Olivia Brooks. Against my better judgment? I answered. Madeline? She snapped. You need to fix this right now. I didn't create this situation. He made a mistake. He photographed my credit card and spent over $5,000. He thought you wouldn't care. He never asked. He loves you. I felt something inside me harden. Then he shouldn't have committed a felony. I hung up and blocked her number too. Near midnight, I sat alone on my couch. Wrapped in a blanket, my eyes burned. My phone finally stopped vibrating. I stared out the window at the city lights. Sometimes betrayal isn't loud. It doesn't arrive with screaming matches or dramatic confessions. Sometimes it arrives disguised as love, wrapped inside trust, hidden beneath the belief that someone who says they care about you would never intentionally hurt you. I wiped my face, then plugged my phone into the charger, because deep down, I knew this nightmare was only beginning. Monday morning. I woke up to 17 missed calls, and more than 40 unread text messages. For a few seconds, staring at the ceiling through the haze of sleep, I forgot what had happened. Then I remembered Las Vegas, the charges, the detective, Ethan. The weight settled over my chest, all over again. Most of the messages were from Ethan's friends and extended family. Some were from numbers I didn't recognize. Coward. Golddigger. You're ruining his future. It was just money. One message simply read, I hope you're happy. I blocked every unknown number I could. Then I silenced notifications altogether. At 10 that morning, Detective Morrison called. Ms. Carter. Yes. I wanted to give you an update. I sat down at my kitchen table. Ethan Brooks was formally arrested last night on charges related to felony, credit card fraud, and theft. I closed my eyes. He posted bond this morning. $10,000 bond. Through a bail bondsman. He's been released pending his arraignment. The words sounded clinical, efficient, as if they belonged to someone else's story. When is court? I asked quietly. 3 weeks. Las Vegas. The district attorney's office will contact you. What happens now? He'll need legal representation. Detective Morrison explained. Depending on negotiations, prior history, and how the case proceeds, sentencing outcomes vary. I nodded even though he couldn't see me. Then his tone shifted. One more thing. Okay. He's probably going to contact you. I tightened my grip on my coffee mug. If he attempts to pressure you, threatens you, or asks you to change your statement, document everything. Okay. And don't discuss the details of the case directly with him. Anything said could complicate proceedings. I understand. After we hung up, I tried to work. I logged into meetings, reviewed code, answered emails, but concentration abandoned me every few minutes. I kept remembering Ethan teaching me how to parallel park when we first started dating. The way he'd squeezed my hand during scary movies. The lazy Sunday mornings when he'd insisted on making pancakes. How do you reconcile those memories with police reports? Around lunchtime, my phone lit up. Ethan. I let it ring. Then again. And again. 7 calls. He left voicemails. I listened to the first one. Maddie. Please pick up. His voice cracked. I'm so sorry. I made a huge mistake. Please call them. Tell them this was a misunderstanding. Please. I stared at the phone, then played the second voicemail. His tears were gone. What are you doing? You're seriously letting this happen. After everything we've been through, you're choosing money over me. I pressed my lips together. Third voicemail. Bargaining. I'll pay you back. Every penny. I'll work overtime. I'll set up payments. Please don't let this ruin my life. I saved them all. I didn't respond. Tuesday afternoon. My credit card company called. Their investigation had concluded in my favor. We've determined the charges were unauthorized. The representative said. The dispute. I hadn't realized how tightly I'd been carrying the financial fear until that moment. I thanked her, then cried in my car after work. Not because of the money, because relief and grief sometimes occupy the same space. Wednesday evening. I looked out my apartment window and saw Ethan's car pulling into the parking lot. Every muscle in my body tightened. No, no, no. A minute later, knocking echoed through my apartment. Maddie. I stayed frozen on the couch. I know you're home. More knocking. Please. I held my breath. We need to talk. Silence. Then louder. Maddie. I looked at my front door, as if it had transformed into something dangerous. The man standing outside wasn't the boyfriend who had surprised me with coffee. He was the person who had violated my trust and expected forgiveness because he regretted getting caught. He knocked for 10 minutes, sometimes pleading, sometimes frustrated. Eventually, the footsteps retreated. I didn't move for another 20 minutes. The following week, Ethan's attorney contacted me. The voicemail was polite, professional. Ms. Carter. My client would appreciate the opportunity to discuss resolving this matter privately. I immediately called Detective Morrison. Do I have to respond? No. Should I? Remember who that attorney works for? He replied. They're protecting Ethan's interests. Not yours. What if they claim I gave him permission? They'll likely try. Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything without speaking to the district attorney. I deleted the voicemail. 2 days later, security from my office called my extension. Madeline. Yes, there's a woman downstairs asking for you. My stomach dropped. Who? She says she's Ethan Brooks's mother. I closed my eyes. I don't want to see her. Security hesitated. Understood. 10 minutes later, they called back. She became disruptive. We've escorted her out. Apparently, she'd shouted in the lobby, accused me of destroying her son's future, demanded to speak to me face to face. Afterward, I filed an incident report with Human Resources. To my surprise, they were compassionate. If anyone else shows up, my HR representative assured me, we'll handle it. I thanked her. The messages kept coming. Friends of friends. People I'd met once at birthday parties. People who knew only Ethan's version of events. Everyone had an opinion. Almost none of them had facts. Eventually, I stopped reading them altogether. The loneliness settled in quietly. Sleep became difficult. I'd wake at 3 in the morning replaying conversations, looking for warning signs, remembering moments I'd overlooked, the jokes about how I'd never notice a few $1,000s. His casual comments about my salary. The way he'd called me practical whenever I said no. I wondered if I'd mistaken admiration for resentment. I wondered if he'd loved me, or simply loved what I represented. Then, during the third week, the district attorney called. Ms. Carter. Yes. We wanted to update you regarding a plea offer extended to Mr. Brooks. I listened carefully. He would plead guilty to a reduced charge. In exchange, full restitution, court fees, community service, 3 years of probation. If he declines, she explained, the case proceeds to trial. What happens if there's a trial? We'll likely ask you to testify. I will. There was silence. Most people accept plea agreements, she said, but I wanted you informed. A few days later, I learned Ethan had rejected the offer. He entered a plea of not guilty. Trial dates were discussed. His attorney argued that perhaps permission had existed, that maybe there had been a misunderstanding. I almost laughed when I heard it. There was nothing misunderstood about written confessions. Around that same time, one of my oldest friends, Daniel Harper, called. Hey. I heard what happened. I braced myself. Instead, he said softly, I just wanted to check on you. Something in my throat tightened. I'm okay. You don't sound okay. I laughed weakly. I don't know what I am. Daniel was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, he said, I think you did the right thing. I blinked rapidly. You do. Maddie. Normal people don't secretly photograph someone's credit card and spend $5,000. For the first time in weeks, I felt less insane, less cruel, less alone. 3 days later, an email appeared in my inbox from Ethan's attorney. Ethan wanted to apologize, in person. No pressure, no lawyers present, just the two of us. I stared at the message. Then, a chill ran down my spine, because after everything that had happened, I still wasn't sure whether Ethan wanted forgiveness or another chance to manipulate me. I forwarded the email to Detective Morrison before I even allowed myself to think about replying. His response arrived later that afternoon. Short. Direct. I strongly advise against meeting with him. I called anyway. Is it really that bad of an idea? I asked. It could be, Detective Morrison said. There are too many ways it complicates things. It could be interpreted as witness tampering. He could pressure you to change your statement. He could try to get you to say something his attorney can use later. I looked at Ethan's email again. No pressure. Just talk. The words suddenly felt less innocent. What should I do? If you want my professional opinion, Detective Morrison said, decline through the district attorney's office. I thanked him and hung up. Then I drafted a brief response through the DA. I would not be meeting with Ethan. No exceptions. When I hit send, I expected relief. Instead, I grieved, because closing that door meant accepting that there wasn't going to be one final conversation that magically explained everything. No hidden misunderstanding. No revelation that restored the man I'd loved. Just consequences. A few days later, Daniel called again. You okay? I'm functioning. He laughed softly. That's not what I asked. I leaned back against my couch. I don't know. I admitted. Sometimes I think maybe I was too harsh. Maddie, $5,000 isn't worth ruining someone's entire future. There was a pause. Then Daniel said quietly, did he accidentally spend $5,000? No. Did he ask first? No. Did he secretly photograph your credit card? I closed my eyes. Yes. Then stop minimizing what happened to you. Tears filled my eyes before I realized they were there. Because the people who blamed me had been loud, but the people who loved me had been steady And steady voices are easier to ignore when guilt is screaming in your ear. A week later, Daniel texted me a screenshot. Have you seen this? Attached was a social media post from Ethan. He hadn't named me directly, but he didn't have to. Some mistakes shouldn't define your entire life. Losing everything over one bad decision proves how unforgiving people can be. Hundreds of comments poured in beneath it. Stay strong. Everyone deserves second chances. She's heartless. I stared at the screen. Then Daniel sent another message. Don't read the comments. Too late. A familiar ache settled into my chest. For about 5 minutes, I genuinely felt sorry for him. Then I remembered standing in my kitchen, the knife slipping from my hand. His text message. Don't worry. You earn enough. The sympathy faded. Because remorse after consequences isn't the same as remorse before exposure. Another update came unexpectedly. Ethan had lost his job. Apparently, the marketing firm where he'd worked had learned about the charges, ethics concerns, liability concerns. He'd been terminated. I sat with that information longer than I expected. I didn't celebrate. I didn't feel triumphant. Mostly, I felt tired. People kept acting as though one decision had destroyed his life. But it hadn't been one decision. It had been dozens. Photographing my card, saving the information, planning the trip, using the numbers repeatedly, texting me as if I'd be flattered by funding it, expecting immunity, lying afterward, rejecting responsibility. Consequences aren't born from moments, they're built through choices. By mid-October, the district attorney called again. Ms. Carter. Yes. We have an update. I braced myself. Mr. Brooks has accepted the plea agreement. I blinked. He did. Yes. I listened carefully as she explained the terms. Ethan would plead guilty to misdemeanor fraud. He would pay restitution totaling $5,347. He would also be responsible for approximately $2,000 in court costs and fines, 3 years of supervised probation, 200 hours of community service. No jail time. But he would have a criminal record if he's unable to pay the restitution in full immediately. She said, the court will establish a monthly payment schedule. I let out a breath. I didn't realize I'd been holding. When is sentencing? 2 weeks. You don't have to attend if you don't wish to. Okay. However, you may submit a victim impact statement. After we ended the call, I sat at my desk staring at a blank document. Victime. I hated the word. It sounded passive, fragile. I didn't feel fragile. I felt angry, exhausted, changed. Eventually, I began typing. I wrote about trust, about the stress of wondering whether my finances had been permanently damaged, about the countless hours spent filing reports and answering questions, about losing faith in someone I'd intended to build a future with. I kept it factual, measured. No insults, no bitterness, just truth. I submitted it the following morning, 2 months after sentencing. Life finally began to resemble something normal again. The restitution payments arrived through the court system, $300 each month, exactly on time. I never had direct contact with Ethan. I learned through mutual acquaintances that he'd moved back in with his parents, that finding another job had been difficult, that he was working evenings at a restaurant while trying to rebuild his life. The angry messages stopped. Most of the people who had condemned me disappeared. A few eventually apologized. Others never spoke to me again. I discovered I didn't miss them. Around that time, I met Noah Bennett. It happened in a coffee shop near my office. He accidentally took my drink because we'd ordered the exact same thing. I'm so sorry, he said, mortified. I laughed for what felt like the first time in months. It's okay. One conversation became another, then dinner, then a second date. By our third date, I told him everything. The fraud, the police reports, the court hearings. I waited for judgment. Instead, Noah leaned back in his chair and said something I still think about. Good. I frowned. Good? You had boundaries. He held my gaze. You protected yourself. I blinked. That doesn't make you cruel. He smiled gently. It means you know your worth. Sometimes, late at night, I still wonder if I overreacted, if I should have handled things differently, if there was another path. Then I remember the text message that started it all. Don't worry. You earn enough. I remember discovering that love had been used as justification for entitlement. That trust had been mistaken for permission. That respect had been treated like an inconvenience, and I stopped wondering, because protecting yourself isn't revenge. Saying no to betrayal isn't cruelty. Holding someone accountable for the choices they willingly made isn't destroying their life. It's refusing to destroy your own. The truth is, some betrayals end relationships. Others reveal exactly who was standing beside you all along. And sometimes, the most painful act of love isn't choosing another person. It's finally choosing yourself.